Oh, no, you have an aha moment every single time you go out.
Yeah?
Every single time you go out. That's what keeps you going is all. And it's not just from one kid. It's from lots of youth, you know, and adults as well.
Yeah. Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome to Your Forest. I'm Matthew Kristoff. On this podcast, we investigate environmental sciences and just talk about cool stuff. Today's episode is with two people I know very well, one of which is my mother, so you can imagine how close we are. And her name is Mary Jane Kristoff, MJ Kristoff, and she has spent the last 25 years doing forest education. She is the executive director for the Lesser Slave Lake Forest Education Society. So she spent, the last couple decades developing programs to get school children out into the bush and teaching them about wetlands and ecology and all kinds of different stuff, wildlife, and interactions with the forest industry, hunting, fishing, all kinds of different stuff. Just getting kids out there to learn about the outdoors and give them a passion for it, right? And with her, also you could consider her a partner in crime, is Patti Campsall. And Patti Campsall has actually been on in the past. She was on the birds episode, and she is the executive director for the Boreal Center for Bird Conservation. So these two worked together for the last couple decades, building these programs, finding funding together, and doing a really awesome job doing, forest education and outdoor education and getting not just kids, but adults involved and getting them to care and to build those values of sustainability and that kind of stuff. It's really, really cool. And they've done an incredible job. I know they've taken something that wasn't really there and made it into something that other people want to copy and want to adopt. So it's great. It's great. They've done a really, really cool thing. So I wanted to bring them on to talk about their ideas about forest education or outdoor education and just kind of, what people can learn from how they've developed their programs and maybe what's important about outdoor education, why kids should be spending time outside learning about this stuff, what's the importance to society. Stuff like that. And I think there's a lot of good information in here, so I think you guys will like it. They're both awesome. I'm slightly biased, but I think they're pretty great. So, sponsors for today, same three as normal. Greenlink Forestry. Greenlink Forestry is a forestry company in Edmonton, Alberta, and they're doing great work in the forestry sector. Damaged Timber is another sponsor. They are an apparel company. They're donating 10% of all their sales to an environmental sciences scholarship. So if you want to, apply for that scholarship, you can go to their website, damagedtimber.com, and you can also buy clothes from them to support the scholarship. They're really cool stuff. Definitely check them out. They're doing a great job. DamagedTimber.com. Put in Your Forest 10 at checkout and you get 10% off. And last but not least, actually, they're the most important one for this year, is West Fraser. West Fraser is another forest company, and they're doing forest management across Alberta and BC. And they're doing really great stuff. They're really pushing the boundaries of what sustainability looks like, what sustainable forest management looks like. And I couldn't thank them enough for their support on this podcast. Their funding is made available through the Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta. So thanks so much, guys. I really couldn't do this without you. So thanks a lot. And without any further messing around, let's get into it. Here is myself, MJ Kristoff, and Patti Campsall. Here we go. I thought a cool way to start it would just be to talk about, and I don't even know the answer to you, like I said this morning or whatever, right? What is your first memory of the outdoors that you can tie back to, having a passion for the outdoors? And maybe obviously you didn't know at the time yet that you wanted to do this, but what was your first memory that you think brought you to understanding the outdoors and having
Well, my mom is your Baba, and I want you to think about what we do whenever we're with her. Okay, everybody, it's outside. Now we go outside. Even when it was minus 40 outside, she'd dress us all up, and we'd have to be out there for at least 5 minutes. So, And my mom worked 12-hour shift work as a nurse. And so whenever she had a weekend off, then we would head off to some park, either Mayfield Park, which I now think is called Horlack Park, Emily Murphy Parks. We would go out to Lake Wabamun, a whole bunch of different lakes that we would head out to. Wherever she could, she'd get us out doing picnics every weekend. So it was basically my mom that got me going to be outside.
Where do you think she got that from?
I do not know where she came. I don't know.
On the farm, I guess.
We'll have to ask her that. I don't know.
Yeah,
growing up on a farm. Yeah.
Well, in
She's
some ways,
hugging trees and stuff.
And I think sometimes it's reflective of the times, right? You don't have a lot of money. Going to the park, go for a picnic.
There's no video games.
Yeah, exactly.
Outside wasn't like it's not like I'm into the outdoors. It's like that's that's what's available. Yeah. Okay. And what about you?
For me, I grew up in Peace River, and we were right at the edge of town, and right behind our house was literally all the hills, and that's how we spent our time. Was we'd run outside and we were like building forts and just exploring, looking for crocuses. We were outside all the time, and we used to laugh. It was basically when the street lights came on, that old analogy, when the lights come on, it's time to go home. That's literally how I grew up.
Yeah.
We had a great group of kids that lived in our neighborhood, and we were just out climbing the hills and running around all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Just 1 second here. I'm just making sure everyone's levels are good. What the heck? You were just really quiet. That's all. It's all there.
I can talk louder. I'll move it closer to my mouth.
Actually, you know what? It wasn't that bad.
Okay.
Sorry. I think it was just the section that I looked at looked weird, but
okay.
Anyways, okay. So moving on. So you guys were both just inundated in it right from the beginning. It wasn't like you were you grew up in the city, but you were still outside all the time though.
I grew up in the city, but in high school I took the aptitude test, and my choices were doing something outside or being a nurse or being a teacher, and I didn't want to be a teacher or a nurse, so I went into forestry. That's how I ended up in forestry.
And I ended up teaching anyways.
And I ended up teaching anyway.
And I remember growing up, I loved to play teacher, but I was like horribly, horribly shy.
Right.
And at that time, I never would have thought I would be able to stand up and talk in front of a group of people. Like that was my fear, my worst nightmare. Now, it's that whole, what you love as a child becomes what you ultimately is what your career is.
There's no way in hell that I would ever know that I'd be doing what I am doing now when I was a kid. Like, there's no way. No. I would have thought absolutely not. I don't want to speak in front of a microphone or like be at a desk all the time. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was wondering, I wasn't sure about your background. Like if you had, like if you maybe came into it later or not. But yeah, I wonder if
growing up, I loved camping and we didn't have a lot of money, so camping holidays with our tent trailer, that's what we did.
Right.
And, traveling all over and just exploring. So yeah, I've always loved that life. Starting off in forestry was because I love biology.
Okay.
And so I went to university to take biology.
Gotcha.
And then I needed a career out of that.
Did you go straight into forestry right off the bat, or did you biology first?
No, I did biology first.
Oh, okay.
And then it's like, okay, you're going to do your master's and PhD or whatever. No.
Yeah.
And there were some other people that I was going to school with on my floor in residence that were taking forestry, and I thought I probably had a glamorized vision of what forestry was at the time. But I thought, hey, you're outside, and hey, this sounded like a good job. So yeah, I switched over to that. Yeah.
I think that's a lot of people get into forestry just because they're just like, yeah, it sounds like you're outside and you're doing cool stuff, and yeah, let's do that. And like most people, I don't think really have any idea what it is. Yeah. What about you? How did you get into how did forestry become a thing?
Well, I took the aptitude test, and I took forestry, and then my first summer job was working in White Court.
So you literally got it from the aptitude test. The test told you should do
forestry
outdoors.
Yes.
Or did it say forestry?
It said forestry. Something to do with forests.
That's interesting.
I was supposed to be a mechanic or an architect.
There you go.
Yeah, I think they're changing the aptitude tests. I don't think they depend on them quite as much anymore.
Yeah, no, that's how it all got started. And then I didn't know if I had picked the right... I was a little bit of a party person in my first year, like a lot of people are, right? And
I can vouch for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So after my first year, I had a job with the Alberta Forest Service. So there we go, aging ourselves quite a bit. Alberta Forest Service, and I cruised timber for many years. I was a timber cruiser. So once I started doing that, I loved it. You're a city girl, and all of a sudden you're out in the bush, and you're riding in helicopters, and you're driving ATVs, and you're doing all sorts sorts of things that you've never done before. So I was sold after my first summer job.
I had the same experience but I'd actually graduated before I had that really juicy field position. But I was sold. This was like the most amazing job ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. So what did you guys do? Like so the path from forestry school to like falling in love with the forestry sector and the, you know what I mean? That type of work, and then a path into outdoor education. What does that look like?
Well, MJ's was first.
Oh, was it? Okay.
So I worked in forestry for the Alberta Forest Service until 88, 89, and we moved to Slave Lake in 87, and I worked in forestry for Slave Lake, and then I stayed at home for 10 years and had children, and
sorry about that.
During that, that's about it. And during that time, there was a junior forest warden program here in town, and they asked if we could join it. And the next thing we know, Terry, your dad, and I are leading the junior forest warden program. Mm-hmm. So that kept me busy for a while, and I did a little contract work on the side. And before this, your dad and I, we wanted to go traveling to Alaska before we got married. So we went to I was working up in Fort McMurray, and my job ended the end of February, and so I needed a job for March, April, and May, and somehow I got a job with the Alberta Forestry Association, which is now defunct, but at the time it was the Education Association for Forestry, and they hired me to do 3 months of programming in Calgary schools. And when I started doing that programming, all of a sudden people were coming up to me, are you a teacher? Are you a teacher? And I go, no. And they would say, you're a natural. You're really good at this. So after a while, I realized this was my forte, and I should quit bucking it and start doing what I'm love and do what I'm good at. Right. So, and I continued on with junior forest wardens, and then the Forest Education Society was started up by Chris Shishikowski. He belonged to the Mackenzie Forest Education Society up in Peace River. He moved to Slave Lake. He got all the business, the Chamber of Commerce, all the forestry companies, the government, the schools. He made a big meeting for everyone. They came and he said, this is what I want to do. I want to start up the Lesser Slave Forest Education Society. He brought in a young lady from Grand Prairie. Her name was Val. I forget her last name. But she was with the Grand Prairie Forest Education Society, and she was their educator. And that was the way this whole group decided they wanted to go. They wanted to have an educator. And so they formed in March of 2000, and by October of 2000, they hired me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always thought, for some reason, I didn't know that it was something that you came into. I thought it was something that you built. I didn't even know that until just now.
Yeah.
Your son.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, it started in March of 2000, and they didn't have anybody hired until October.
Gotcha.
But basically,
you took over the whole thing and started being all the programming.
We started off really small and worked our way up and figured out what we wanted to do and what we didn't want to do. And, we started off seeing about 1,200 students a year, and
really small, yeah.
Really
only
small.
1,200.
Yeah, no. And then now, 19 years later, we see close to 9,000 students a year.
Yeah.
But it's both between Patti's group, the Lesser Slave Lake Bird Observatory, and my group that we're able to see as many students as we are. Sure. If we were both single organizations without being partnerships, we wouldn't be able to see the number of people.
Yeah.
Because we depend on each other's funding, and we each get funding, and from FRIA, and we are able to hire educators to do a lot of the stuff. And so when we first started this, the educators would work half-time for the Forest Education Society and then half-time for the Lesser Slave Lake Bird Observatory.
Oh, okay.
And so that's what we continue to do, and it's gotten to the point where you can't tell where one job ends and one job starts.
It's a blur.
Yeah,
it's a blur. Yeah.
But that's that's the important thing, though, is like getting that funding is like, especially in tight times, like economically, right? That it's got to put a big damper on it. So that makes sense. And then what about you? What did that line look like?
Well, I was, I had a successful career in forestry, and I joke my career path, I could see it was going to be like HR and budget. Like, I knew, I could see management in my future. And when I stepped back, when I first moved to Slave Lake, it was actually because there was a couple of women that had gone on maternity leave. So there was a job. That's how I ended up in Slave Lake. And
was that for the
they
government
also
or for a mill?
Pardon me?
Is that for the government or for the mill?
For the forestry,
Okay.
Forest Service, yeah.
Yeah.
So there was Anne McInerney she had gone on maternity leave,
Okay.
and so there was a position for a project forester.
Okay.
So I moved back to Slave Lake. I obviously knew Terry and MJ from before,
Mm-hmm.
and so they sucked me into junior forest wardens as well, enticed me. I'm still doing it a lot of years later, and means I've always loved working with kids. I've always liked that connecting kids to what you do and that spark and just working with people of any age.
Yeah.
And so I was sort of I was at that point where if I was going to do a career shift, it was do it now or never.
Right.
And so I went back and got my education degree with the idea, not that I would be working in a school, but I really wanted to do environmental education of some kind.
Yeah.
And my timing was perfect because at that point, the Boreal Center for Bird Conservation was being built.
Oh, yeah.
And so because of that, there was an opportunity. They were doing a pilot of basically a shared educator for the summer, and they hired me to do that job after I graduated. Okay. And of course, I did an amazing job. Amazing.
Nailed it.
So then they worked on getting funding. The center opened by that point, and they had a job. Well, the center opened in 2006. I started in 2005.
Okay.
And so there was a full-time educator job.
That's awesome.
So I got the fun educator job for about a year and a half, maybe. And then I ended up becoming the executive director. So then I was back to HR and budgets.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem, right? The good people that are really good at their jobs, they end up getting bumped up into doing something that's, managing all the other people that aren't so good at their job.
It was, like I had a vision for what I thought, our two organizations could do there, what the center. And it was like, well, do you to take that initiative and run with it, or do you be a happy educator?
Yeah.
So I get a really nice blend of it all though now, because I still get to do programming with kids. I still get to visit tourists from all over the world that come to the Boreal Center. I still get to be involved in ecology, bird research. Like it's a really neat blend of all the things I love. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty wicked.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. And yeah, you guys have so many different things going on, like so many different programs, like between the two of you too. So it's like, yeah, you guys get a lot of exposure to different stuff.
Well, and it's that partnership in terms of the success of what we've been able to build here over the past 10 plus years. It's because of that partnership and the ability to really, we always say, squeeze every dollar for what we can do out of it. But we have got the ability to reach lots of different diverse audiences, really get those messages out. It's that model of how we deliver our programs, where we share resources and educators and, jointly apply for grants is really successful. And it's enabled us to get a lot of really good funding to support our programs.
Because your guys' program is pretty unique in like the province. I don't know, but is it nationally? Is it pretty unique, or is it more like, do you know?
For sure, in the province, there used to be several other forest education societies in the province. And in 2008, 2009, when the economy went down, that's when most of them lost funding and had a hard time keeping it going. The Mackenzie Forest Education Society may still be going, but they are being run under the Boreal Research Institute. Is it the Boreal Research Institute in Peace River? Okay. Yeah, so they're underneath their umbrella now. Okay. So I'm not exactly sure what they're doing, but they used to have educators as well. And so we would, all the educators, from Grand Prairie to Peace River to Lac La Biche, Inside Education out of Edmonton, we would all meet up once a year and see what was happening and see if we can get any new ideas from anybody. But now it's just basically our group that does it, and in the city there's Inside Education that does forest education. Yeah,
because there wasn't much of like a system in place to do this kind of outdoor education, right? It was kind of a new idea to be like teaching kids about the outdoors, I guess, because I guess at that time we were probably just kids are starting to spend more time indoors, I guess, not really playing with sticks and rocks and building forts and stuff. But I guess before we get into it too much, I wanted to ask, what do you guys think why do you think it's important to do outdoor education? I'll just leave it wide open like that.
Wow.
You got to have an answer somewhere deep in your mind.
You
don't realize you have it, but you have it, right? Like, what's the importance? Basically, why do you do what you do? Why is it important? Yeah.
You have to go outside with a group of kids, a group of adults, anybody who doesn't go outside a whole lot, or who wants to go for walks but has no idea what they're looking at. every time we go out, every single time we go out, we can hear the kids in the background. We can hear adults in the background going, I didn't know that. This is fantastic. I didn't know this. And so if you go out every single time and you're being reinforced over and over and over again about how much people want to learn about the outside and about the environment and about the forest and whatever people want to learn, but they like to have somebody else show them. And our programs, what Patti and I've created, is really interactive, like a lot of other outdoor education programs. But I think what makes ours unique is because we are in northern Alberta. There's not too many programs here in northern Alberta. And we also have been figured out a way to work together. And I think partnerships is a really cool way to keep doing things. And that's one of the reasons why we've continued to survive. And we've been really creative and imaginative about trying to find funding and find good places to get it from. So in the end, the two minds worked really well together to keep this going for ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think you take for granted, you think that because we live in northern Alberta, everybody knows the forest. They're all comfortable being out there. And that's not true at all.
Not true at all.
And so a lot of what we're doing, whether it's kindergarten up to adults, is just really getting people comfortable and getting that love of the boreal forest. And you need to get them to care about the forest and, what lives in that forest. And then they can start listening to your conservation messages. Then they can start caring about threatened species or for me, threatened bird species. So, but you have to start. And what I go to different environmental education, conferences and things, and you'll talk to some organization in the city that sees like piles and piles of kids. The numbers are astounding, but they'll only see those kids once.
Right.
For us, between our two programs, we will literally see, especially for Slave Lake and High Prairie, we'll see every kid at every grade level at some point, so they know our educators. They know MJ by, she's famous.
Yeah.
You get kids running up in the grocery store. So it gives you a chance to really build important connections with those kids and that trust with the teachers and those schools. And so we can deliver really great programming that really gets those kind of key messages
for sure.
across. So.
And that's kind of what I was thinking, right? Is like building those values. Like, why are those values, those outdoor values important? Yeah, why should they care, right? Because I think there's a lot of people, especially like in this world we live in now, right? It's become increasingly more indoors. Everyone's spending their time online, and they're just kind of. There's a lot of immediate gratification, right? Not a lot of, Not a lot of appreciation for the patients or what they may consider the mundane or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I wonder like how, just getting kids out there and having those values, and like you said, getting them to give a shit about about conservation and about like, why is this important besides the fact that trees are nice and birds are cool. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, so that's, I think that's important. Just kind of the foot in the door and getting them in there. So, and it makes sense that having that, like that inundation of just like every single year, it's not like a one-off, right? Where they see you see them for a couple days and then it's over, right? You see them every single year. So they're constantly building on that past knowledge, and then you never know what they might take from it, right?
Well, Patti and I liken it to the recycling program. 25 years ago, nobody was recycling. It started off in the school system, and you guys came home and said, Mom, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? Oh. So then we started recycling. And a lot of people recycle now. Not everybody, but a lot of people are recycling, and we're learning new things about recycling all the time. Yeah. Well, it's the same thing about forests. We have to learn new things about it all the time. And in light of what's happening today about people talking about climate change, to make those connections, you need to understand the very basics of it from the very beginning. You can't just listen to one person speaking about it and assume that they're speaking the truth. You need to be knowledgeable and find out as much information as you can from different sources, and then form an opinion on it.
Those YouTube videos can be damaging.
Well, and those kids that MJ, when she first started, whatever year that was, I mean, those kids that she was teaching then, they're the parents now, and they're the decision makers and voters. And, so you're building your community culture. Yeah. That's really what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. So. Yeah, and in the end, if we don't have nature, what do we have, right? The whole thing falls apart. Yeah.
Well, there's a really good book called, was it Back to Nature? Is that what did he call it? Or it was the one about children. Okay, yeah.
Nature deficit disorder was what they were talking about.
They were talking about
the one
nature.
that defined nature deficit disorder.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't remember what the hell that's called.
I don't remember the author either, so I'll have to look. But at one point, we were all talking about it, and it's not just happening in the cities. We were talking about it here. Everybody's saying, "Well, you guys are in the forest all the time. Kids here don't have that problem." Well, they do. A lot of people haven't even been out to the Boreal Center for Bird Conservation, and they live in Slave Lake for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
They don't know they just don't go out there.
Yeah.
So it's not because they don't care. It's just they probably their lives get busy, right?
Yeah.
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 So.
Different values, and it's just it's hard to get people to change their values, right? So I guess that kind of leads nicely into what another thing I was thinking about was, at what point in the age range do you think, like say someone's listening that wants to do outdoor education or something like that, and they want to know, they only have the opportunity to do like see the kids once or whatever, right? At what point in the age range do you think makes the most impact? Like, do you think is it really, really young, or is it when they're older, like in high school and stuff like that, where they have the most like curiosity and the most engagement, you know?
I think it all depends. Like when they're younger, everything's exciting,
Right.
every single moment, you know. And then you move into junior high, and they're a little bit too cool. But you'd be surprised at what they even though they are looking cool, they are absorbing.
They're listening.
They're
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
They're listening. And you know, there's times where it looks like a child isn't, or a student isn't having any listening skills at all. And next thing you know, they're going out and you've provided them with instructions on how to do a plot study, but you know, a biology 20 plot study, and they've just taken the bull by the horns and are going for it. So I think it depends on the kids. It depends on the teacher, how they get the kids excited about the field trip that they're going to go on and they're going to learn about. So for me, I just like the interactiveness of it all. They really, for me, growing up, I had a hard time learning. If I saw things, I really got it, but just reading about it wasn't enough. So for me, it's about seeing. I want kids to learn the way that I learn, which is by talking about it and trying it out and seeing it and using all my senses.
Getting your hands dirty.
Getting my hands dirty, yeah.
Well, and the nice thing about doing field trips is sometimes those kids that really do well and thrive on the field trips aren't the ones that do well in a classroom.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like
of
it gives them the ability to kind of really shine and kind of show what they can do. And so it's sometimes the teachers will warn you, well, you know, this kid might, you know, and they're the ones that are the stars on those field trips.
The classroom's a pretty, like, it's a pretty specific situation where, like, it's just,
it can be pretty structured for kids.
It's super structured, and kids' lives just aren't that way, right? Like, getting them to care about whatever math or whatever, if they're sitting down at a table the whole time, it's difficult to do. But get them outside, get them doing stuff, and all of a sudden they can do math probably. just different situation, right? So
in terms of the activities that I really like doing with kids, whether it's a plot study or something where they're sort of empowered to explore or to get data, that's the stuff that I like doing with kids, because so often, whether it's in the school environment or whether, you know, they're after school, you know, activities, everything is so programmed and everything's so determined for them that I like giving that. And we'll do a snowshoe hike and the kids will take off and they're waiting for me to tell them where to go. And I say, well, no, you guys are picking. And like the look on their face, it's like, what?
I guess they're worried about getting lost, I suppose. Like
I mean, you obviously know where they're going to go and where you ultimately want to end up. But just that whole empowerment to kids, or letting them go explore or look for, you know, sometimes it's literally like MJ will do, you know, give them 5 minutes to look for signs of wildlife. That free time sort of. Yeah. You know, kids love.
So that totally makes sense. Yeah, getting away from that structured learning style. And I think even like the modern education programs are trying to get away from that as much as possible and have the kids engage in a way that's not like, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3. It's like, okay, you need to figure this out.
Yeah, here's your problem.
Figure it out. Whatever. However you want to figure it out, figure it out. Like that's how people learn.
Well, the big buzzword was experiential education, right? So, you know, instead of someone just telling you all about it, you're discovering it. You're figuring it out.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's the best way that I learned. Like if someone's just explaining to me how something works, I'm not really going to care until I have that aha moment, right? And just kind of try it out myself and fail a million times and then eventually do it. But so that makes perfect sense.
Well, and that's what keeps us going. Like when you're an educator, it's like you feed off your audience or you know, the kids you're with, and it's when you can see that little spark in their eyes, like that aha moment that you just talked about, or you know, our banders are pulling the bird out of the bag, or even if it's like high school kids and they just get it. Yeah, like that's the stuff that, you know, it's rewarding for us.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find those aha moments are few and far between, or do you find you have more engagement than you would expect?
Oh no, you have an aha moment every single time you go out.
Yeah?
Every single time
yeah.
you go out.
Yeah.
That's what keeps you going is all. And it's not just from one kid, it's from lots of youth, you know,
Yeah.
and adults as well.
Yeah.
You know, I remember going on a ecology walk with a bunch of adults, and it turned out there was a botanist in the crowd, and it just freaked me out, right? Because I wanted to make sure I thought, what if I don't know my plants as well as I think I do, right? So we got down, and he asked me the name of this one plant, and I said, you know, it looks really familiar to me, but there's no flowers on it right now, so I just don't know what it is. And he goes, I don't know what it is either. And I went, phew! So we both went back to the center, and we were able to look it up and discovered it was bluebells. But, you know, you're used to seeing it in one form, and you forget that there's other forms as well, right?
Every single spring, I spend the first week that I am in the bush just kind of trying to figure out what all these plants are called, right? I'm like, I know that plant. What the hell is it? And it just it takes time to, because exactly. Like, they see them in just one form or another. Or I remember trying to do branch ID in university, and that was the most brutal thing of all time. Like, what do you mean it's a branch? Like, what do you want from me?
But that's what it looks like most of the time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in Canada, It's
Well, that's the
ridiculous.
same thing with bird ID.
Yeah.
Every spring, I want to know the songs. I know the songs, but which bird is that? What
I asked you this morning. I said I could hear
There's
the
the white-throated sparrow outside.
right.
Yeah,
The white-throated
there he
sparrow.
is.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll pick that up. It'd be cool if they did pick it up, but I don't know. But yeah, the white-throated sparrow we always hear out here, and there's a bunch of other ones. But that's another thing that I need to get more into, because it's a cool. I don't know. It's just a cool connection to the forest, understanding all their niches and what they sound like and what they do, but it's not something I've ever really spent time doing, because you have to be inundated in it like you are, right? Like it's but.
To use it all the time, right?
Yeah.
And you can never, ever learn everything there is to know about the boreal forest. You can walk it forever and still not know everything that there is. So that's what's so exciting about living in this particular ecosystem, is there's so many different things that we can learn about. Every time I go out, I learn something new.
I was going to say, with what we do and working with the kids and the adults is, you're always learning.
Yeah.
And they
That's
always
what I
ask a
enjoy.
question.
Yeah.
They point out to something. What is that? That's a good question.
Let's
go.
figure it out.
Let's figure it out. Let's look it up.
So you got a whole backpack full of all your ID books and everything.
Oh,
just
yeah,
in
always.
case.
Backpacks weigh a ton.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's easy not to know a lot of the stuff that's going on out there.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful to watch people discover it. So a lot of our we've got a boreal cheat sheet for plants. It's two-sided. Okay, you guys go find these plants for us and see if you can identify what they are. And it's interesting to see them come back. This was so simple. This was so good. But it depends on the time of year as well. But if you know when to do it, it's a great learning opportunity.
Wintertime would be interesting.
Yes, wintertime doesn't work. For sure.
Then you're studying snowflakes.
Yeah, I don't know if you can tell. I still have a sore spot about that branch ID. But yeah, that's interesting. I would have thought there would have been more reluctance for I don't know, just like you were saying, like some kids feel like they're too cool or whatever, right? And just I was definitely that kid. I was definitely I was in part of your programs before, and I'm sure I was a little asshole. But
how did I'll ask you the question? How did it feel to be the son of the tree lady?
I feel like I remember being the clown in the situation, trying making fun and making jokes, because I knew you couldn't really do anything.
You were safe.
So I was kind of pushing the boundaries, but those are just a few different memories I have. I don't specifically remember, but I think most people didn't realize until later, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I remember them being awesome. It was weird for me because I have a very obviously growing up with you and Dad, it was we were always outside, and we were always at junior forest wardens. So the outdoors for me was just that was just part of life, the way it was for you guys, right? And it's not. So the idea of outdoor education to me is it seems weird, because I just what do you mean? This isn't everybody's experience, but it's definitely not even close to everybody's experience, right? Even people that live they live on an acreage right next to, surrounded by forests, they don't spend any time in it for whatever reason, right? So.
And you're right, it's harder now with online. It's so easy to be online and to have a cell phone and to have an iPad, and it's just way easier to get away from stuff, so it's going to be harder to get people out into the bush and out into the outdoor education, into a park. It's just going to be harder to get them out into nature.
Well, and it's just challenging, within the school system. We see lots of elementary school students because it's easier for them to kind of figure out the field trips and get them out of the school. Their curriculum isn't as intense.
Yeah.
It's so we make lots of connections at that age, and they're all excited, and it's an extravaganza.
Yeah.
But it's really important to be reaching those junior high school kids, because they're the ones that are, especially like in terms of like future careers, what they're wanting to do. And they've got some really interesting questions about, like, you can have some really good discussions, but it's incredibly difficult to get into, either field trips at that upper level or get into the classroom, because the curriculum is just so tight for time.
Unless they're in specifically like an outdoor program. Like I remember in high school,
we'll see the Bio 30s because they're doing population monitoring. Like there's certain grade levels that you will see, but it's hard to kind of like blitz a school.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of the biology 20 classes because they're doing biospheres, they're doing ecosystems. And so we take them out into the bush and we teach them how to identify trees, how to identify animals, how to identify some plants. And then they do a plot study and they learn how to be scientists, basically, and do the research on the information in that plot. But in order to do that, they need to know how to identify the tree, and they need to know how to identify the plants and how to identify wildlife as well.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's... I'm pulling a blank here. I had a good question and I totally lost it.
In grade 9, we do a cool program with biodiversity. So it's great to take grade 9 students out into the forest and showcase what is important about biodiversity out there and what is the difference between it. So why is a spruce tree shaped the way it is, and why is it? How does that help it survive? Right. Why is a broadleaf tree like an aspen or a poplar shaped the way it is, and how does it survive? How does it continue to go? So it's you keep bringing up these different topics with them, and you can see the light going on. It's something you don't think about it. Like why is a spruce needle kind of waxy? Why does it have that waxy feeling? You know, so that the snow can fall off. So if you start providing them with these other ideas out there, they're just to look at the forest from a different way, and once you start doing that, then you can see the light going on, and they're asking more and more questions.
I was going to ask who comes up, like, do you get really, really good questions from all age types, or is there a specific time that you see like really insightful questions that kind of make you take a step back and go, oh yeah, what is that?
Well, they all have questions, but they all have stories to tell you, lots of stories. So you have to figure out which stories you're listening to and which stories you're not listening to. And in some cases, for young ones, you have to stop the storytelling right off the bat, because they all have a story to tell you. You know, they caught this frog and they seen this bear and they saw this elk over here, and it could go on for a long, long time. Yeah. So you have to remember why you're there, and what Patti was trying to get at before with the junior high and senior high is their timing is really, really short. They've got a really short time to fit their whole curriculum in there, and they can't afford to take an all-day field trip. So how can you take your field trip, take their time, and use it most effectively? So lucky for us, we're 5 minutes away from the forest, so they can just hop on a bus. 5 minutes later, they're at in a park where there's a forest, or they can be in another near the Martin Hills, where we have the Martin Hills Forest right there. And it doesn't take long, and you can spend an hour with them, and they still have time to get back to school and finish their other programming. The key is to hit the curriculum. If you don't hit the curriculum, you're not going to get into school. And it's something different. Like it's the teachers know their curriculum and they know it, but they only know it from a certain aspect. So what we do is we take the curriculum and change it around and have it looking at it from a forest aspect, from an outdoor education aspect.
Or what those concepts look like in the real world, right? So it helps the kids understand.
So like what's an example of that?
Well, the population monitoring that we do. So they're studying all the concepts of how you monitor populations. So for the Bio 30s, we take them down to the Lesser Slave Lake Bird Observatory so they actually can see our scientists, what they're doing. Then we go back into the classroom and put all that into context. So it's not just theory. It's something that happens in the real world. So.
For sure. Yeah, like... Do you find trouble trying to find those ties in the curriculum? Like, do you go to the schools and say, hey, what's your curriculum? And like you try and find those in that curriculum, or like how do you make that work?
No, it's in you. you know now we know the curriculum. We know what fits and what doesn't fit.
Right. Okay.
There's a standard, and Alberta education has a standard curriculum. The science curriculum or social studies for every grade level. It's there.
Right.
It's how you can develop lesson plans and activities that weave that in.
Okay, so you guys just get a hold of that and try and make it work, and then contact the school and go from there.
In my case, I'm supported by a lot of forest industry. They provide us a lot of funding to keep. So whenever we're talking about it, we like to tie it back into forestry. How does forestry work this? How does this happen, right? Why do you need to know the names of these plants? Why do you need to know the soil type? Why, we try to tie it all back into that. And so that makes it more hands-on, because a lot of them live out in the forest. They go quadding every single day. They're always out there. So you're now providing them more information about what's happening in the forest besides driving a quad out into the bush, right?
Yeah.
So they're learning all the time. Hey, I remember they told us that the way that you identify the spruce is by, rolling it between your fingers. And if it's square, then that means it's a spruce tree, and if it comes in pairs, it's a pine.
Yeah.
And if it's a flat needle, then it's a fir tree.
Yeah.
They remember these things because you're saying it over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think it would be really, really hard for you guys to find a student in Slave Lake or High Prairie that doesn't know the name of the forest we live in, because we reinforce that over and over and over again.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I think that's it's hard to get that kind of engagement, I think, in a lot of places, unless there's people like yourselves forcing that engagement, right? Because it's not something that the government is really paying attention to or trying to push into the curriculum, right? It's like, it's you guys as an outside organization being like, hey, this is cool too, come check it out, this is important, right?
Well, and the amazing thing that for MJ's program with the Forest Ed Society is it's free programming. So basically you just need the money for the bus to get yourself to that site, and it's a full day of free programming. Yeah. And that's like gold for these teachers.
Yeah. So for sure. What are some of the most favorite programs that you guys do? I think you were telling me that the wetlands one is pretty big for you guys.
Wetlands programming. So we get funding from the Lesser Slave Watershed Council, and they provide us with funding to do their programming for them. So we explore a spruce bog. So kids actually get out of the bus and into the spruce bog and learn all about the soil of a spruce bog and the plants and the trees and the animals that live there. And they do marsh critters and a lot of programs throughout Alberta do marsh critters. They're looking, but I don't know how many actually go into a spruce bog. But marsh critters is something that's really cool to see, because they're little bugs in the water that people didn't even know that they were there, right? Yeah. So the more you have, the healthier the water is, right? So you're teaching kids about that. And then there's a water quality testing. So with the Watershed Council, they come in and teach the kids how to actually test the quality of the water for the pH, the turbidity, that sort of stuff.
I wish there was a way to know, to test, outdoor competency, later on in high school students, their final exams or whatever, right? to measure eco-centric values and to see, what what the High Prairie Slave Lake kind of area, your guys' catchment area, what the ecocentric views and values are coming out of here versus some other place that maybe a similar place like Peace River or something that is surrounded by just as much forest but doesn't have the programs. Do you guys know? There's no way to really measure that, really, hey?
No, there's no way to measure that.
But I would say, as a community like Slave Lake and High Prairie, recognizing a lot of families, they work in forest, they're supported through forestry. Yeah. But I would say, compared to a lot of areas, I think our students and the public have a better understanding of forestry, what it is, why it's important. I think that base knowledge is very strong here compared to other areas.
Yeah, forestry is definitely not rejected in a small town like this, where it's but it's very dependent on it in a lot of ways. So it's it's interesting. I wonder, do you guys know of any programs similar to this in the cities and stuff like that?
Well, Inside Education has a program.
Inside Education, right? Yeah.
So they're based out of Edmonton and Calgary.
But you said that's just a one-off kind of thing. They might get them a couple times in their
they get them at least once a year.
Once a year.
Well, not once a year, but they do programs in forestry. I don't know what years they focus in on, but they do a lot of wetlands programming as well. Okay. So they're covering two areas there, forests and wetlands. Right. Yeah.
Because I know there's a few smaller programs that are targeting specific age groups and stuff like that.
And across Alberta, there's lots of environmental education organizations. A lot of them have a particular niche maybe that they focus on.
Right.
But there's we're not unique in that there's lots of environmental education organizations delivering programs all over the place.
Yeah.
I think
specifically down south.
Yeah. Calgary has a lot of, there's lots and lots of
very
options
conservation
down there.
focused.
Yeah. I think what makes us unique in terms of just the partnership, and then, there's not as many opportunities for Northern Alberta students. And I think that's what's coming with the Boreal Center and the education program that MJ has, is we're becoming sort of an education center for our region. So we're getting lots of First Nations and Métis students coming down. So we're their field trip destination as opposed to going to Edmonton. So they're, we've got students from Wabasca, Sandy Lake, the various First Nations. So I think that's definitely something that we're going to be growing.
Yeah.
That's the real opportunity for us to provide those kind of unique and exciting field trips for
sure.
them.
Yeah. Have you guys ever looked into, this is just something that popped in my head. Have you guys ever looked into like adding in, this would be like really hard to do. I don't know how you would do this, but like a traditional use values portion to the program? Like, I don't even know how you'd go about doing that. Right. But like, there's a whole nother, I don't even know, like library of understanding in the Indigenous communities, right? And like if that's something that can be added in somehow, I don't know. But
we always, and whenever we're doing an ecology walk and we're talking about the plants and animals, so there we always talk about the traditional uses. Yeah. We always say, the people that lived here 300 years ago, they used this plant for this. Yeah. And, or this animal was used for this. We always bring that in no matter what we're doing, because people are interested in it. They want to know. It's not just recently that this has been happening for thousands and thousands of years, right?
And they're still using it.
And they're still using it.
I mean, we're obviously more like Western society has forced its way into those cultures, but I mean, there's still a lot of like deep integration into the forest and the spiritual side and all that stuff too. So yeah, I know that for sure. That's cool.
No, there's a lot of Indigenous people within our communities, all of our communities around here. So that was a strong basis for a lot of that. So we've been very lucky that way. We had Northern Lakes College and Shell provide us with a substantial amount of money to particularly give traditional use values back to the students that are taking it. So it's something that we're really proud of.
Oh, that's cool.
The new exhibits at the Boreal Center, it has Cree headers, there's an audio Cree translation and a written translation. So we're recognizing kind of that, that part of our community. And we're also having some discussions with some of the communities in our area about what are some of those opportunities to link with some of that traditional use. And
for sure. That heritage, because it's something I think is largely forgotten in our society for a long time, right? Like even me growing up, like in school, I don't remember ever hearing about, certain, the residential schools or the horrible things that happened, and trying to integrate that back into our culture, right? So it's good to see that there's more of that, right? Making them feel included and like this is all part, and we need to all be working in the same direction, right?
For sure.
Because well, that's good. That's awesome. I don't think I've heard of much of that going on. So that's got to be pretty unique for sure for you guys to have gotten that kind of.
I think they do it in other environmental education organizations, and I'm pretty sure that they do it. It's becoming more popular. I think more not popular, but more prevalent. When they go out and they do it. I think, but we're all learning as we go along as well. It's something that we're not going to ever learn everything, and we're learning as we go along about it. And it's that it's important when people start asking you questions. As educators, we have to be more knowledgeable about it because we are getting more and more questions. Do we know all of it? No, not even close to it. But we can say, this is what we have. This is what I know. And if you want to learn more about this, you can go to this website or check this out.
Yeah, it'd be cool to get somebody in that had. I mean, obviously there's an infinite amount of knowledge on that side of it, right? So it'd be interesting if you guys could, or maybe not you guys, but someone could, at some point from that community that has that knowledge that'd be willing to share it, right? Could come in and speak very specifically, and you could do like a specific course on it or whatever. I don't know, but because
I would bring in an Indigenous person that's their specialty that knew about it. No, I wouldn't want to step in and say that I know this.
Well, and that's the sensitive bit for MJ and I in this kind of programming is. You don't want to be speaking their story, so it's a fine balance. So I think. I mean, if you look at my vision down the road, is I'd love to have an Indigenous interpreter working for us that could be working with these communities and delivering that kind of programming, and then it's authentic, right?
Yeah.
So
For sure. Yeah, exactly. Like what you said, right? You don't want to step on what they know because we don't know.
It's not my story to tell. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. I would like to see way more outdoor education going on out there, because I mean, like you see there's just so much misunderstanding of like how, like what forestry is and how environmental management works and everything. It's a lot of, I would love to see more of what you guys do around the whole country, right? Just to get people to understand, because there's so much basic misunderstanding, right? Which is a weird problem to be having with something, very simple.
I think the first steps are being done.
Yeah.
Patti and I received some money from FRIA, Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta, and they're given funds through forest industry, and they provided us with some money to do some junior senior high programs. And one of those programs that we did was called Balancing the Boreal, Indigenous Traditional Use and Forest Management. And so we did a whole an app, we did a video, we did anything you can. It's downloaded from our website. They can get the programs. Any teacher can get it. But the video is really fabulous because you're interviewing other people from Indigenous communities about what they think forestry is and how it affects them in their communities. But we're also interviewing people from forestry, and so we're showing how the two are trying to connect as best they can. They're not saying they're perfect. They're not saying this is the best way. They're just saying these are the values we're looking at. And this is what forestry is looking at it, and how can the two of us work together? Yeah,
no, for sure.
And I was going to say the whole theme of that project that we developed was, I mean, forestry is complex. It's more than just growing trees, whether it's species at risk or integrated land management. It's a very complex management that you're trying to do.
Well, exactly, right? That's the point. Is like, I think people hear forestry and they immediately think logging. You're like, okay, you're like, yes, that's how the funding is like acquired to do this stuff, but like there's so much more involved in it, right? That and I would like to see more of these programs throughout the whole province, right? I mean, it seems like as a society we're heading toward a more eco-centric viewpoint of understanding our place in nature and our balance with it, right? But I think it takes stuff like this to make that happen, right?
When you were talking about kind of forestry and trying to get their message across, or just having people understand what they do. I have a forestry background, MJ does as well. And sometimes it can be frustrating when we're watching forestry professionals. They're telling people what they're doing, but they're not explaining what they're doing. Yeah. Whether you're using acronyms or terminology, or it's a different language, and so in some ways I was thinking, as Terry and as MJ is retiring too, you almost need to hire someone who can be your your facilitator, forestry 101, whatever you want to call it, that can start from the ground steps up, because it's a real skill to be able to talk about the complex, detailed forest management planning process and put it into something that the general public can understand. And if you really want buy-in on your plans, if they're not understanding really what's going on,
or why it's important. Right? Do you guys find you have to spend a lot of time starting at the very beginning, like starting why, like this is why you're here today and this is why you should care?
For sure.
You do that?
No, that's what we do. Yeah, no doubt about it.
From every age group, eh?
From every age group. So why is this important? Why are you doing this? Why can't we just do it this way? So it's so
everything is backed up, and not just we do it this way because we do it this way. It's backed up. We do it this way because this and this. And
an example is MJ and I also got funding through our local Fire Smart committee to do education programming. You can't talk about treatments in Fire Smart without starting at the beginning with, this is what you need to have, the fire triangle and how crowning and ladder, like you have to talk about the basic fundamentals of fire, how it spreads, how it grows, to be able to link that to, okay, and this is why you do this action.
For management, for Fire Smart.
This is why you move your wood. This is why you clean your eaves troughs. Like, they need to, or this is why you thin and prune your forest.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, because I think a lot of people just start at the, okay, you're this old, we expect you to know this, so we're doing this because of this. But it's not backed up by those basic building blocks for knowledge, right? And I think people get scared to ask questions too, right? Because they feel stupid, they don't ask a dumb question. And do you find you have a lot of like people coming up to you at the end of class asking questions because they're too nervous to ask it?
Yeah.
I was that way growing up. I never wanted to ask questions.
Especially high school, they won't put their hand up.
Yeah, they don't want to sound like the.
And all of us are that way. We're all afraid to look stupid in front of everybody else, so we come up and talk to people privately.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I don't think there's a way to change that. That's just the way the human nature
that's just
is.
the way people are. Yeah, for sure. You can say at the beginning, "There's no stupid question," but in the end, in the back of our mind, it's like, well, but my friends will think there's a stupid question, so I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
They're always more comfortable talking 101 about things.
For sure. Yeah, there's less judgment there, definitely. What about the incorporation of, like, especially for children, but not even for children, for anybody, any age, making it not just about, like, why and, like, why it's important, but also that, like, that fun, like that, you know what I mean? Like that fun part of it, right? Because, like, if something's not fun, you can explain to somebody why something is important, but unless, especially for children, unless it's fun, they're not going to care, right? So it's like, I mean, obviously I've been a part of some of these programs, right? And I know you guys are everything is very, like, I don't know, you're very engaged, right? Like big hand gestures and everything's exciting, and, like,
it's fun.
Yeah, when you're doing it, you're not doing it like in this podcast where we're just explaining things, right? Like, everything's very over exaggerated and very animated, right? So was there a point where you found you had to start doing that, or did you realize right off the bat that was something that had to be that had to be fun in order for it to engage in children and stuff?
No, I'm exaggerated all the time.
That's your nature.
That's my nature. I'm always talking with my hands and jumping up and down, and no, it's just part of who I am. But I think all the educators that we hire, that's what we expect from them as well. You know, you're not just there to talk to them. If you're just going to talk to them, well, then there's no point in being there.
Yeah,
you're there to get them excited.
You need to hook them.
You have to hook them. Yeah, exactly.
You have to be passionate.
If you don't care, they won't.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the basics, I guess. Yeah. It's like when you get a bad teacher, it's just that they're worn down and they stop caring, so it's not engaging anymore, right? So it's but it can be tough. I imagine. Ups and downs.
Well, one of the best programs that we have out there is forestry school tours for grade 6s. And that's done it used to be done during Alberta Forest Week, which was the first week in May, and now it's being done during National Forest Week at the end of September. And the only reason we switched it out is that it's just a lot of times we just didn't have green up by the time we wanted to do the programs, and it wasn't working out for us.
Yeah.
So we switched to National Forest Week, and that's when we do our programming. We take the students out for the day. They go through 5 stations, so they're learning about plant ID, they're learning about fire smart, they're learning about ecology of the boreal forest, they learn about tree measurements, how to measure a tree, and why this is important. Like, why are we measuring these trees? Well, it's just like a candy store. When you go into a candy store, you have to inventory it. You need to know what's in there, and it's the same thing with trees. We need to know what kind of trees are in here and how much wood is in here, and whether or not when we can cut it down, when it will be ready for us to harvest, and then when we can go back and regrow it again and plant new trees for our forests.
And then tying all that back into biodiversity and water management
it all back in.
Everything else that the rest of society cares about, right? It's those sexy parts like biodiversity. And
wow, that's Patti's word. Patti calls it the sexy stuff.
Yeah.
I always tease them. They have to come up with a sexy title for whatever program they're doing.
For sure.
And that's that, like I say, it's that hook. It's fun. It's exciting. Yeah.
Well, especially in this society, I think where we've, like you guys were saying, we're moving towards that. People are starting to find conservation exciting, or they want to be a part of it and they want to understand it. So if you can tie in, land management to that part, all of a sudden it becomes engaging, and they can get into it.
And I think you can see that cultural shift. I mean, the young teens and adults that are coming through now. I mean, there's definitely whether you want to call it a green slant to it, but they definitely want to make a difference, and they can see kind of all these environmental things that are happening, and it can be pretty doom and gloom if you just sit there and talk, well, the climate is you want to make them feel like there's something that they can do about it, because if you just say it's over.
You got there's hope. There's always hope. There's always Climate change doesn't mean we're going to be living in a desert. It just means things are going to change.
Yeah. But when you were talking about, like, how do you hook kids or adults even, it's all about, for me, it's all about keeping it interactive, hands-on, letting them do activities, and they could sit here and listen to us talk for an hour, but that's not exciting.
No.
Well, maybe it's exciting now. But, so it's hands-on, it's interactive, it's fun in that they're engaged in things.
Yeah.
And Yeah, I think that's a big piece.
When they walk away, they know that they can do certain things. So, for example, there is a book called The Guide to Common Native Trees of Alberta and Shrubs. I can't remember what the exact name is offhand, but it's out there. And it's really simple for kids to learn how to use it and adults to learn about it. Every time somebody uses that book, they go, holy moly, I want this book. They want to download it. So it's you can download it from the Inside Education website, and anyone can have it as a book, as a hand tool. And it's simple to use because there's two choices. There's a dichotomous key in there. There's two choices each time they go through it. And if they make a mistake, they just have to back up a little bit and see where they made that mistake, and then they can continue on. But they can't believe how simple it is to actually identify the different plants.
Figure it out.
And they figure it out on their own. And that's what's exciting. Instead of you telling them what it is, they're learning it for themselves. And now they know they can grab this book and go figure it out wherever they are.
And they probably have that knowledge forever now, right? Like it's more solidified in their mind besides just memorizing it for an exam.
Yeah.
Right?
And for us, I would say probably our most successful program, and the one that we get kind of the best feedback on, is we call it Bird Banding 101, but it's early elementary, where they go out to the Lesser Slave Lake Bird Observatory. And the big thing for our programs is the students are interacting directly with the scientists. So we have, song and dance educators that are, like you say, they're all excited, but what the kids really love is the fact that they're actually talking to the bird banders. They're seeing them do what they do. It's that authentic experience.
It's like seeing Superman.
Just like MJ when she has the forestry staff come in. And that, I think, is what's unique about our programs. And they're having fun. They're doing hands-on stuff that's really reinforcing the science of what we're doing at the Bird Observatory. And I always think the success of it is when they do career fair at CJ Schurter, there's always some little bird banders in there somewhere.
That's awesome.
They want to be, well, in this case, Robin Perkins is our bander in charge. She was one of those kids that was at the banding lab tours years ago. She's a local girl who got hooked and is now working here for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. Because getting them to see, because I guess if your teacher's telling you about something, you're like, okay, yeah, sure, there's some stuff going on somewhere out there. I don't know, whatever. And then, but if you have the firefighter standing in front of you going like, I fight fires, all of a sudden it's engagement and like, what like all of these specific questions come up. Yeah, it's real. It's like, no, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. That's awesome. So would you say that's the favorite program that you do?
Well, we do everything from, grade 1 up to post-secondary students at the banding lab. For me, I think that there's aha moments every time they pull that bird out of the bag for the first time and people get to see it.
Yeah.
So I enjoy that one probably the most, I think, of any of them. Yeah.
What about you?
Ecology walks.
Yeah.
I love doing ecology walks. So whenever there's a program out there and they need extra help, I always want to be the one doing the ecology walk, but I don't necessarily always have that opportunity to do it, but that's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you could say, just to finish off everything here, if you could give like some advice to either people trying to start something like what you guys have started or to teachers, for teachers that want to get, their students and stuff like that engaged, or even to forestry professionals, right? What advice would you give to get more engagement into outdoor education, or to try to develop this eco-centric viewpoint in our society?
Well, I think forestry professionals are being asked to go into the school system. So if someone's asked you to go into the school system to teach something, then you should look up what the curriculum is for that particular grade and figure out what you're doing, how that fits in with that. And there's lots of ways to do that. And if you're an engaged forestry professional and you want to teach people, like you like to go up and get people excited about it, then you're going to come up with all sorts of cool ideas on how to do that. It's not if you're just going in and you're just talking and you're doing a PowerPoint presentation and you're showing your stuff, that's not enough. You have to get the kids, you have to figure out what other things are out there that you can do and get them involved.
Yeah.
Bring in a sample of a spruce tree, bring in a sample of an aspen tree, show them how the dichotomous key works, especially if you can't go outside into the, bring it into the classroom.
Yeah.
We do tree ID at the end of, we usually go into the classroom for a day and we do tree ID during just before provincial exams for grade 6s.
Okay.
So that when they walk into their provincial exam, if there's one thing that they know how to identify their trees. So
is that on the provincial exam?
Yes,
it is. Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Trees and forests.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome. What about you? What do you think?
When you started talking, I had kind of a slightly, like someone who's wanting to get into environmental education.
Sure.
I think you would never have any regrets. You will never get rich. But the ability to make a difference, to connect and really, talk about exciting things, like it's a career that it's well worth it.
Yeah. No, you guys
what
are
I
both
would say,
very
yeah.
into it, right? You guys are both very much into it and love it. And like you said, you're not going to get rich, but you're out doing what you love every day.
You get rewards every day. Every time you take kids or adults or anybody out and do a program with them, Do you hear from from teachers that you have more engagement in your guys' program than they otherwise do in other ones? I would think so. Being that they're outside all of a sudden, and it's outside the classroom, it's a different situation. You'd think that children would be more likely to just they're out of their classroom element, right? It might feel like they're not in class.
We are booked up all the time
Yeah.
for every single grade. Yeah. So the teachers keep coming back over and over again. Now there's some schools that have turnovers in teachers, so it takes a while to get back into there again. You try and get that information out there to them every year. We send out our marketing brochures and what we need to do, but sometimes you're in a school a lot for 3 or 4 years, and then all of a sudden you've gone off their radar for a while.
Yeah.
But eventually you get back on it again. Yeah.
Well, and even though we have lots of return, we always know we're going to get the grade 2s. We're going to get, you always know you're getting certain classes, certain grades. But I think we always are also looking at our programs all the time. Just, we can always be better.
Yeah.
We can always, come up with new. So you take the best of what you already have, and you're always making it better, I guess.
Moving forward. Yeah. Well, and that's key to anything, right? Like anytime you just decide to sit back and keep static and not improve and not push the boundaries of what you can do, then it gets boring for you, and then you stop caring, and then the whole thing starts sucking. So it makes sense that you need to be constantly engaged and into it, and
And there's lots of resources out there for people. Lots of resources. Just Google it and you're going to find out what's out there, and there's no reason why I get phone calls all the time from teachers. Do you know how I can do this? Do you think you can teach this? Could you do this? And maybe they're not from my particular region. So we're creating website lesson plans so that people can download them and take them out to the school no matter where they are in Alberta or even across Western Canada. So we're trying to develop new ways to get across to more people what we're doing and how we're doing it.
How can we share what we do beyond? Because, to be honest, there's a capacity of what we could deliver, at any given time. So how do we take that and go beyond? That's sort of where we're trying to go.
But I think for this catchment area that you guys are in, like you've done it, right? Like you've done, so it'd be awesome to see this everywhere. That's what I would love to see, right? But it's weird that it takes just two people, or it takes people to take their own initiative, right? There's no,
I think it takes.
There's no official path for it, is what I'm saying, right? It's not like I want to be a fireman, and then you just end up doing the steps to be a fireman. It's not like becoming an outdoor educator is like you kind of need to pave your own way. Almost, right?
I think we've been flexible. You have to be creative. You have to be a risk taker, and just you see an opportunity or a program or a need, or someone calls you up about something, and you just need to figure it out.
Yeah.
Our things are changing all the time.
Yeah.
Always. Like Patti and I are not bored. There's no way we are bored. There's always stuff
going on.
That's what we love
about our job.
Yeah, it's always changing. There's always new things to develop. We're always being funded by different organizations who want a particular program. So it's, we're definitely not bored. And I agree. Other people, there should be more of this throughout. And some environmental organizations are doing it, but not so much of it is as forest focused as ours is, because we're right here in the middle of the boreal forest. So it's easy for us to access it, right?
Yeah. No, it's true. Because I guess like down south, it's going to be a completely different program. Like, it'll be similar, but it's not the boreal forest. It's more grasslands and whatever, right? So yeah.
And you may get there's lots of stuff out there. You don't need to follow our lesson plans completely, but there's something in there
it's a
good template to follow. It might give you some good ideas. Or phone us up and say, hey, I'm going into this school. What could I do? Like, what would be a good program for me to do? And then we can help out. And the key here is just being a little interactive and not just standing up there and having a PowerPoint presentation. You need to do more with it to get the kids excited about what they're doing.
Yeah.
Or youth or adults, anyone. Nobody wants to just sit there and watch you talk. Not today.
I used to joke that my favorite audiences were seniors and kindergartens, probably more grade ones, because they're both very similar in that they're just excited. They're excited. They want to be there. You can see that, that interest in their face. They've got questions. They've got stories. Like they're like both awesome audiences.
Yeah, it's funny, eh? Like, you gotta go. you stop caring if people think you're.
Yeah, you don't worry about, you put your hand up
judgment.
to anything. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just asking the questions
Yeah.
because you honestly want to know. You're
Yeah,
not
you can
afraid
see
of
that
consequences.
excitement in their faces.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're both fun audiences.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Patty and I are in a unique situation regarding Fire Smart because the town of Slave Lake burnt down. Funding was provided to the town of Slave Lake to rebuild and redo some new programs, and we were provided funding with Fire Smart, and no other community would have been provided this. So we've been provided with extra funds that we wouldn't normally have been provided with. And so we've created these really cool Fire Smart education programs, which are now getting very popular across Canada. So it's nice to know that you've done something really good with the amount of funding that was provided to the town of Slave Lake and to the MD of Lesser Slave River. They were provided with this funding, and the Saw Ridge First Nation. They were provided with this funding, and they provided Patty and I an opportunity to build a really good Fire Smart education program.
Yeah.
And other communities wouldn't have aren't going to get this because they're not providing funding to all communities the way that we receive funding after our fire.
For sure. Well, and you guys developed some stuff that's totally unique. Like Fire Smart Canada is now trying to take over some of the stuff that you guys are doing and try and spread it around the country. And it was definitely put to well use for sure. No, that's awesome.
But I mean, cool. MJ and I are always looking for those funding opportunities, new, that ultimately we end up developing new programs around, but we're always looking at how can we maintain our programs that we have. We're always looking for grant. We operate on grants and donations, and it's a constant.
If people want to give you money, they can
they
contact
can call
you where?
us anytime.
And one of our strongest supporters is FRIA, the Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta.
Yeah,
we couldn't
huge.
they've been right from the very beginning. They've supported us, and they continue to support us. So we're very grateful for that.
They
There's
support
nowhere
me
we
too.
we would not be where we were without them. That's for sure.
No, they're definitely doing a lot of good work for sure. So, any final thoughts? Anything you want to finish off on?
You go ahead.
You first.
I'm drawing a blank as well.
Website, contact information, all that stuff. People want to get a hold of you.
They can get a hold of us or me at the Boreal Center for Bird Conservation. Just Google us and you will find us, or the Lesser Slave Lake Bird Observatory.
Okay, and
they can get a hold of the Lesser Slave Forest Education Society. I'm only going to be there till the end of June, and then I retire. Woohoo! But I'll go back to work a couple days a week to help the new executive director out, who is Miss Corey Klassen. So she starts in September. And when she gets the hang of everything, then I'll be on my merry way. And hopefully they'll invite me back every once in a while to do the fun stuff, to go out there and do the ecology walks.
Yes, and I will very much miss working with MJ. We've been known each other for 30
long
plus
time.
years.
Did you guys graduate from university together?
We went to school together.
Yeah.
So yes, we've known each other forever, which I think is sort of that knowing each other has definitely helped us work through all of this.
For sure.
Yeah.
No, definitely. Yeah. You need to be able to be honest with one another.
Well, and
working this
trust
close.
is huge, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's definitely, you guys got, it's a unique situation, and I think people would have a hard time duplicating what you guys got going on, but I hope we can see more of it and kind of provide a bit of a template here so that it can happen. I don't know.
We are very unique.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for listening, guys. I hope you guys like that. I know I really enjoy talking to my mom and Patty about the stuff that they do, because I know they are really, really, really passionate about all of it, and it's just cool to hear what they have to say. So I hope you guys learned something, and remember to rate and review, subscribe, all that good stuff. Tell a friend, tell 2 friends, tell 2 of your friends right now. Text them. If you're driving, don't text them. Wait until you stop. Text them then, or tell the person sitting next to you. Tell them. Check this show out. It's cool. If you think it's cool. If you don't think it's cool, then don't do that. Just don't talk about it. Anyways, we'll catch you guys in a couple weeks. Take it easy.